This is Miriam Raftery with the East County Magazine Show on KNSJ, and today my very special guest is Stan Caplan. He is a candidate running in the 51st Congressional District against incumbent Sara Jacobs and several lesser-known candidates. Born in Alabama, he has a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas, and he's got a business background. He previously ran for Congress in the 51st District as a Republican, but now he's running as a Democrat, calling himself the Trojan Horse candidate who still considers himself conservative. Stan, I want to thank you for reaching out to request this interview.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, this will be the first election after California's redistricting initiative was passed by voters. Can you share with us what communities in general are in the redrawn 51st District and what part of it you live in?
Yes, all right. Well, thank you very much for having me again. And the districting, the new district it takes in a lot more of East County. In fact, a lot of what Congressman Darrell Issa had before.
Hmm.
We start on the west around the Mission Valley area,
Hmm.
work our way east past San Diego State. We
Hmm.
include Tierra Santa, Del Cerro, La Mesa, Spring Valley, the El Cajon. We go past Alpine, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So it goes way far east and almost as far north as Ramona.
Does it
So
include
we get,
like Campo and Boulevard and those areas in the southeast part of the county, or is that
well,
in
we're not
Marcus's?
quite that. That's around the boundary to the
Okay.
south. And but again, we mostly go east and then somewhat more north than we did prior to redistricting.
Okay. So, Stan, what made you decide to change parties?
Well, that's interesting. My political history only started 4 years ago when I went down to the Republican headquarters in 2022, and I asked them why they weren't putting anyone up to vote. It was a pretty polarized
Tehran, I
political
think you mean, right?
situation back then,
Yeah.
and I decided that I wasn't real happy with what was going on in the country. I had never been in politics, had no relationships, had no fundraising capability, but I told them if nobody was going to do it, I would at least step in
Hmm.
and represent the Republican Party.
And what
Um,
percentage of the votes did you get that time around?
we ended up getting 88,000 votes, which represented 38% of
Yeah, that's
the final result.
significant. So, are there any issues? I know you've said you still consider yourself a conservative at heart on most things. Are there any issues where you disagree with the Trump MAGA agenda, or perhaps leaning either more libertarian or more liberal for that matter?
Yeah, I will say that I agree with a lot of the policies. I believe in an America First agenda. I believe that criminal illegals should not have been brought into the country. I'm all for legal immigration. My grandparents came here as immigrants, and so I do believe in a lot of, his domestic policies. I also believe that, we should be energy self-sufficient. Uh, in terms of maybe where I do disagree, I believe, unfortunately, he's becoming more of a politician. I think he's a good businessman, but I think that one of the important variables in, I guess, making government a little more lean and having, the private sector more involved in our total economy was when Elon Musk came in, and I thought it was a good idea to root out the waste, fraud, and abuse. And that seems to be kind of on the back burner now. And so I really think that there should be more attention to that. I'm not going to get into Trump's personality. I've never met him. I think that, he is a little self-serving, but in terms of his domestic policies, pretty much in agreement with him.
Okay, and you've told me that your change of party basically was pragmatic because you looked at the numbers and realized that the Democrats have a big edge in terms of party registration in this district, and that frankly, someone with an R after their name probably couldn't win. Um, well, you mentioned the economy. What do you believe should be done to strengthen the economy and bring down inflation?
Well, I'm gonna have to go back to really the waste, fraud, and abuse. I think what's being uncovered now uh, is astounding. I think that if one were to be efficient and run the government like a business, you would probably see that a good portion of the government could be trimmed down. But not only that, I think there should be audits and careful monitoring of where the taxpayer money goes. Regular folks work hard and they have to pay a good portion of their earnings in taxes.
What are
And so there should be some responsibility to see that it's spent wisely. I think if you were to get to the bottom line of what's wasted or defrauded, it would probably be a substantial portion that could result in lower tax rates for individuals and a closer balancing of the budget. In addition, we do pay energy costs, particularly in California for
yeah.
our utilities. I think San Diego Gas and Electric needs some scrutiny. They should be audited and monitored. There's again,
Yeah, we do have the highest, I think, the highest utility rates in the contiguous United States. So that's an interesting point. Do you agree or disagree with the Trump tariffs that, frankly, have driven up prices on some goods for consumers and businesses, although the president ran on a platform of reducing inflation, but at least that factor has helped uh, drive it in the opposite direction?
some things you can look at short-sighted and some long-term. I really think that for many years, our country uh, has moved too many of our manufacturing firms away that are pretty important. The pharmaceutical industry, defense technology, anything where we are reliant on China or others that may not be, friendly. I think it's important that, not only do we keep our industrial base, but they're good, high-paying jobs. When I was growing up, I don't care if you worked in an automobile factory or a good manufacturing company, you were able to make a good living and support your family. Unfortunately, a lot of those jobs have gone to, the service sector or to retail sector or something that does, makes it more difficult for people to survive. So I have to say, if the tariffs have been successful in bringing manufacturing back, there may be a little short-term inflation that is harmful to small business, but I think long term, it's in the best interest of our country.
Okay, thanks for answering that. We've seen a lot of, uh, on foreign policy, quite a bit of military conflicts that have been initiated under this administration, most notably the war on Iran that has just, inflamed the entire Middle East right now. I would like to ask if you support the war going on in Iran, and what do you believe would need to happen in order to end that?
Okay, fair enough. Um, Again, if you look at long term, what the consequences may be, and again, I don't have inside information, but if it's true that Iran was close to developing a nuclear weapon, I feel like they couldn't be trusted with that. I think it's unfortunate that there was not more consolidation. In other words, I think NATO should have stepped up and as a group and done something to try to alleviate this issue. But since that wasn't the case, it fell on, the United States to
Yeah,
do that.
well, I mean,
And
in all fairness, Trump has sort of alienated NATO. He's talked about not thinking NATO is necessary and pulling the U.S. out and not supporting um, NATO goals such as, aid for Ukraine. So, perhaps it's not surprising that NATO didn't rush to our aid on this one. What are your thoughts about the whole NATO stance?
well, I think we've certainly done more for them than they've done for us.
Fair statement.
Again, we don't have to go back to World War II,
Right.
but the U.S. has sent a substantial portion of its military there, and basically, I, I guess the bottom line is they've seen that there has not been a problem with Russia, except for this Ukraine issue for decades. So, in addition, I think the U.S. has probably spent quite a bit more than the NATO countries in terms of supporting that institution. So again, it's like the tariff situation. I think since World War II, the U.S. has probably put out more than they've received, and our country has a $39 trillion deficit, and that needs to be attended to. And one way to do it is to, balance out the trade deficits, among other things. So. I don't have any sympathy right now, to be honest with you, for NATO. I think they should have helped with, and this Iran situation might have been uh, uh, finished sooner. But unfortunately, we are where we are now.
Let's move on and talk about some other domestic issues. Stan, where do you stand on social issues such as abortion, where the Supreme Court has thrown that back to the states, and gay rights? Do you support, I guess the most extreme position of that all abortions should be illegal, or that states should be able to ban them all? Or do you believe that there should be some safeguards, for example, if a woman's life is in danger, or if a 12-year-old is raped, those sorts of things? And also, where do you stand on the gay rights and gay marriage issue that some feel could be the next thing, coming before the High Court?
Okay, well, the abortion issue first. This is a very volatile issue for some reason. Um, And again, I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I grew up in Alabama, which is a lot different than California.
Hmm.
And maybe, culture and beliefs are different in each state. So I don't see anything wrong with, having, states' rights over that. I will also add that I don't have a daughter, but if I did and she was raped, I would certainly want to have some options on, how to handle that.
Hmm.
And I'll go further.
Or if your wife, what about if your wife's life was in danger?
That comes first.
Mhm.
Absolutely. There's
Okay.
no doubt about that. And anything that you can do in the privacy of your own home, I think is your business. What does that translate to? Again, I'm not a doctor,
Mhm.
and I have never been pregnant personally, but I will tell you that early on, I think a family should have the right to make certain decisions.
Okay. What about we have seen a rollback under the current administration of civil rights enforcement, such as in the educational fields and other things, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Could you clarify what your views are on those issues?
Well, I've heard the term DEI, quite a bit.
Hmm.
I guess there's different interpretations depending upon who you ask.
Right.
But I just feel that whether it's, that things should be based on merit. I mean, I think that this country was founded on hard work, ambition, being the best you can be. And I don't think it's fair to anyone to put anyone ahead because of their race, creed, religion, whatever. That in a capitalist society, you work hard and you have ambitions and goals, and you do the best you can to achieve them.
You've mentioned immigration, which is probably the biggest hot button issue right now across the nation, or one of the biggest. I think a lot of Trump voters supported initially the idea of, deporting violent criminals, which is sort of what he ran on doing. But we've certainly seen it go farther than that, where we're now seeing, you know, DACA students who came here as kids, being deported, removal of protections for groups such as Afghans who were translators serving in our military, and certain tactics by ICE that have resulted in deaths of even U.S. citizens and detaining them, where you have to carry papers. So I wanted to ask specifically your stance on the whole immigration issue. Do you agree with, everything that you're seeing going on right now, or are there some areas where you believe perhaps some reforms or limits are needed?
Well, first of all, I think the U.S. should know who is coming into their country. I have not, spent days down at the border
Mhm.
observing what was going on at the Biden administration. Sometimes you can't believe everything you see on TV, regardless of the
Right.
station.
Yeah.
And but I think the government has enough to do if they'll just concentrate on getting illegal criminals out of the country. I mean, I don't know how many there are, if it's, 10,000, 100,000, or a million.
Hmm.
But I think there should be some vetting also. I don't know if 10 million people came in under the Biden administration or what. How many
Not, not,
gotaways?
not
I don't I don't even think the government knows. But the point being, we should know who's in the country, and I think that's a huge job that should have priority. So I mean, that's where the effort should be right now.
Okay. You've touched on energy, which is another major issue. I would like to ask you what your energy priorities are. You mentioned energy independence, but that could be everything from, opening up offshore oil drilling or Alaskan oil reserves to doing solar and wind everywhere. There's a lot of different,
Sure.
facets that can be included in that. I think we all agree that we don't want to be dependent on Iran for oil if we can avoid it. So I would like to ask, what are your priorities for making us more energy independent? And also, where do you stand on climate change? Do you believe that that is a serious problem that we ought to also be addressing?
All right. In terms of energy independence, look, I'm not against renewables.
Mhm.
It should be a decision made by economics, quite frankly. If we have oil reserves and they can be exploited in a cost-effective and in an environmentally sensitive way,
Mhm.
then I'm not opposed to it. I will tell you, in California, you know what we pay for gasoline. And
Yeah, it's high.
I think one of the reasons is that it's my understanding there used to be 11 or 12 refineries, and now we're down to two.
Yeah.
And and we've stopped anything offshore. I don't know. Again, I've not done any environmental studies, but if it can be done safely and environmentally soundly,
Mhm.
I'm all for it. In
So you don't
terms
want, so you wouldn't take us back to the days of before any regulations when things were so smoggy here that I literally passed out on the streets of LA and had to be revived by paramedics on a very smoggy day from the smog. That's how
no,
bad it
well,
was in the early 80s here.
Well, when I'm in Washington, I'm going to remember your personal issues, and I'm going to go your way.
All righty. Well, it sounds like you're open to some middle ground on that issue, at least.
And by the way, I don't see anything wrong with nuclear. It's safe if done properly, and very cost effective. And by the way, Trump does go overboard on the windmills and all that.
Mhm.
I mean, if they're set up properly and maintained, and
Mhm. Well, it's
and
interesting you raise that because I know even many people who are generally for the idea of renewables and think climate change is a problem, but who've seen some real problems with some of the industrial scale, so-called green energy projects too. We've had windmills, wind turbines, we should call them. These things are 500 feet tall that that have burst into flames in East County and caused fires, for
right.
example. Or if you put them too close to homes, there can be infrasound issues. So I think there can be some siting issues. Maybe we don't put them in the very most fire-prone regions, for example.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so it's
But
a lot of times
point
it's a
being,
matter of moderation on so many things.
yeah, right. We can have a mix. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but we
Mhm.
need to at least have the ability to provide enough to keep our energy costs down. And I think it's a little outrageous that we pay $2 a gallon more than most parts of the country.
Wildfires are enormous concerns here in East County. I think really all of San Diego County, because we've all seen in 2007 and 2003 what happens when a fire that starts in East County gets out of control. Um, you may not have been here, but I mean, in 2007, we had 500,000 people across the county evacuated. It was larger than the evacuations from Hurricane Katrina. And yet, the president, as part of his understandable effort to try to, save money by making cuts to reduce the size of government,
Miriam,
has also slashed federal firefighting and funding for FEMA, Federal
Miriam.
Emergency Disaster Aid. Yeah, Stan?
Okay, now I got you. You
Oh,
were you were
did it
okay.
freeze for a minute? Let me repeat the question. So wildfires are very big concerns in East County, where a fire, as we've seen in the past, can get out of control and even threaten San Diego. And yet, as part of his zeal to reduce the size of the federal government and save money, the president has also slashed federal firefighting and funding for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Disaster Aid that helps people after disasters such as fires or floods. Do you support or oppose those actions? Would you be a voice for, maybe restoring some of those cuts?
I'm sorry I lost your video for a minute. On the wildfires,
Mhm.
I don't know, what all of the issues are. I don't know if it's electrical infrastructure. I can't give you an informed answer on that as to what the major causes. I don't know if there needs to be more thinning, but whatever needs to be done, availability to water. But whatever needs to be done, I would look into.
Yeah, the fires out here have been from a variety of causes, and most were not started on federal land. Um, there have been some that were started by electrical lines, power lines. There have been some that were, simply, people throwing a cigarette out, lightning, even lightning fires. So it's a variety of different causes on these. Um, your opponent, well, I want to ask you specifically, though, about the FEMA. Trump has cut FEMA aid, has even talked about eliminating the Federal Emergency Disaster Relief Agency, which of course provided a whole lot of aid to people in East County after these big fires. Are you concerned about that? Do you think that is going too far, or do you support that as part of reducing the cost of government?
Yeah, I don't know why Trump did that, to be honest with you. I don't know if he found some fraud or waste, but obviously when you have natural disasters, people need help quickly.
Hmm.
Um, we can point to the Palisades in the Los Angeles area projects that, they've been stalled. Trump claims he's been trying to push, the regulations out of the way to get things developed quicker. I don't know, if that's the truth or not. I don't know where the fault lies. But to be without your home for years is not good for anyone. And there needs to be quick action because people do need help when everything they have is either burned or flooded or destroyed overnight.
There you go. Your opponent, Congresswoman Sara Jacobs, is the Democratic Party's endorsed candidate in this race. Stan, why do you believe voters should put their trust in a candidate who has changed parties but isn't endorsed by either party? And what is your strategy for, trying to win?
Fair enough. I think Sarah Jacobs is way too far to the left. I think they call it progressive today. I don't agree with her on most issues that we've been discussing today, from energy to immigration to social issues. I think that most people in the country agree more with me, and I'm referring to moderates and conservatives. I believe there's a lot of moderates in the Democrat Party that will not speak up. Today, unfortunately, we hear on the news from the fringes, whether it's far left, far right, they're the ones that make the most noise. And so I think it's time that people are not afraid to speak out. Hopefully, they'll go vote. But I know that even though I'm not endorsed by either the Democratic or Republican Party, that if people will investigate, look into what I stand for, then I will have a good chance to succeed and represent them. Because today in Washington, these politicians, they just want to preserve their positions of power and their own self-interest. And I think people are tired of this corruption. By the way, term limits. I'm a firm believer in term limits to get some change in there so people don't develop the relationships that
Yeah.
entice them to become corrupt.
Well, that would take a constitutional amendment, which would be a monumental battle at the federal level. But Stan, where can people find more information about you and your candidacy? What's your website?
Our website is caplanforcongress.com, and that's spelled CAPLANFORCONGRESS.com. If they'll email me, I'll be glad to get back in touch with them. I'll talk with anybody about any of the issues that are, concerning them today.
Thank you very much. And we will be reaching out to Sara Jacobs at some point also for an interview as the incumbent in the race. Stan, I really want to thank you for reaching out to us to request this interview. For those of you who may have tuned in late, Stan Caplan is a candidate running in the 51st Congressional District. He is a former Republican who recently became a Democrat, and he's calling himself the Trojan Horse in the race, hoping to attract some moderate and conservative voters across the 51st Congressional District, the redrawn district that now includes a good portion of East County. Stan,
Excuse me, Miriam, could I just add one more thing to
yeah,
that?
I
Just
was just going to give you the final word here.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
want to clarify why I made the change.
Mhm.
Politics is determined by a couple of things. One, of course, what is the registration in the district?
Right.
If it's an 18-point Democrat registration advantage,
Hmm.
that's very difficult to overcome.
It is.
Number two, it's all I always get asked is how much money can you raise? And so the unfortunate thing in politics, it's all about the money also. My opponent is from a very wealthy family where money's not an issue. So I had to mathematically make a decision as to where I would have a chance because a Republican cannot win in that district,
Right.
period.
Well, I applaud you for at least being honest about that. We've certainly seen candidates run in the past sometimes under a party that they don't believe in because they think it gives them an advantage, but usually they don't fess up to that.
Right.
And I think it's at least refreshing to see someone who's honest about their reasons and your positions. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come on our show to share your views, to offer some alternatives for those voters that might be looking for other choices in the 51st Congressional District. So thank you for taking the time to join us today on
I
the East
froze
County.
again.
Whoops. Stan, are you there? Okay. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us today on the East County Magazine radio show on KNSJ. And we will be posting the interview on our website also at eastcountymagazine.org. Thank you, Stan.
All right, Miriam, thank you very much. Is there anything you need for me to do at this time?
I think we've covered it. You're welcome to send us anything else or add comments when the story's online. So thank
Okay, let me ask you this, please. Would this be published in your magazine? Is it going to be on radio? How will I get a link or some notice from you, where to find it?
When it's online, I can send you a link to it. What we will do is we will put the podcast up and a write-up about the interview on our website. And it'll also be airing on KNSJ, which currently is streaming live at knsj.org. Uh, their transmitter tower, unfortunately, was damaged recently in a storm, and so it's been off air on the AM dial. But they still have a lot of followers who follow them, on the internet, and we're averaging about 10 million hits a month and about a quarter million unique visitors every month on the East County Magazine website. So it's a large audience, and
Well, I hope I was able to answer your questions, and I certainly thank you for this opportunity.
you're welcome. Thank you, Stan.
Okay.